When I turned 18, my parents sold our house and left me homeless so they could travel. 5 years later, my mom showed up crying because my dad cheated, and I laughed in her face and shut the door. I'm a 23-year-old man who was cut off by my parents at 18. From my childhood, I had a troubled relationship with them, feeling unwanted and unloved. By high school, I stopped trying to gain their affection and spoke to them only when necessary. My dad was a pediatrician, and my mom taught middle school science. It was ironic how they were good with other people's kids but not their own. On my 18th birthday, my parents made it clear they no longer had any responsibility for me. I hadn't applied to college yet and planned to take a gap year to save money. I got a job at a local supermarket, but soon after, my parents announced they were selling the house to travel and I needed to find a place to live. Despite my pleas, they remained firm, leaving me with no place to go. I reached out to a coworker, now my wife, who let me live with her despite her own struggles. We became close, and I started contributing to rent once I had saved enough. I worked hard, eventually becoming a floor supervisor at the supermarket, and my wife put herself through cosmetology school. Our lives were going well until my mother showed up unannounced, seeking help after my father left her for another woman. She expected to stay with me, but I repeated her own words back to her, refusing to take responsibility for her. My wife thought I was too harsh, but she understood my perspective after I explained my childhood experiences. My mother then harassed me on social media, accusing me and my father of cruelty. She even created fake profiles to tag me and my friends in her posts. Despite reporting these accounts, she continued her antics. Eventually, she started showing up at my workplace, trying to intimidate me. After ignoring her for a week, she confronted me at my car, crying and desperate. I offered her some money but refused to let her stay with me, which made her furious. A month passed without any contact from her. I discovered she had found out about my life through an old public Facebook account. Friends informed me she had been staying in a motel but had now blocked them, likely giving up on reaching out to me. Nearly a year later, I heard from family members that my parents were back together, despite my mother's previous heartbreak over my father's betrayal. This news left me shocked and confused. Background. Growing up, I had a troubled relationship with my parents. From an early age, I could tell I was not wanted. My parents were professionals, my dad, a pediatrician, and my mom, a middle school science teacher. Ironically, they were great with other people's children but not with their own. By high school, our interactions were minimal. I spoke to them only when necessary, feeling unwanted and a burden. On my 18th birthday, they told me they had fulfilled their legal obligation, and it was time for me to be independent. They were selling the house to travel the country, leaving me with nowhere to go. Despite my pleas for a few months to prepare, they were adamant about their plans. This led to a huge fight, and I left realizing I had no support system. My parents had distanced themselves from their families, and my friends were all away at college. The turning point. In desperation, I called a coworker from the supermarket where I worked. This coworker, now my wife, understood my situation as she had similar issues with her parents. She let me stay with her, and over time, we grew closer and eventually married. I worked hard, moving up to a floor supervisor position, while my wife pursued cosmetology school. The unexpected reunion. 5 years later, my mother showed up at my door, unannounced. She was crying, explaining that my father had left her for another woman, and she needed a place to stay. I was shocked and angry. I repeated her own words back to her, refusing to help and shutting the door in her face. My wife felt I was too harsh and suggested giving my mother another chance. She had lost both her parents recently, so I understood her perspective. However, I was firm in my decision, explaining to my wife the years of neglect and mistreatment I endured. Escalation. My mother did not take my rejection well. She started harassing me through social media, creating fake profiles to post about how cruel my father and I were. She tagged me, my wife, and our friends in these posts. Everyone reported the accounts, but she continued creating new ones. It was disturbing how much she knew about my life despite my private social media accounts. She even showed up at my workplace, glaring at me for hours. Eventually, she confronted me at my car after work, sobbing and pleading for help. She admitted she had no money and had been borrowing from friends to survive. I offered to give her some money for her expenses but made it clear she could not stay with me. This led to another angry outburst from her, and she stormed off. A resolution. A month passed without any contact from my mother. I discovered she had gathered information about me from an old public Facebook account. She was living in a motel, as confirmed by some of her old friends. Despite her attempts to guilt and manipulate me, I stood firm in my decision. A year later, It has been almost a year since I last heard from my mother. I learned from family members that my parents were back together. My father had reached out to apologize, and she forgave him. This reconciliation shocked me, given how devastated she was by his betrayal. Despite everything, I hope they find peace and stability. For now, I am focusing on my own life, building a future with my wife and putting the past behind me. The aftermath. In the months following my final encounter with my mother, I struggled with a mix of emotions. Relief was predominant, but there was also a lingering sadness. Despite everything, she was still my mother, and part of me mourned the relationship we never had. My wife remained a steadfast support, encouraging me to seek therapy to process these complex feelings. Therapy and self-discovery. Therapy proved to be a turning point. My therapist helped me navigate my turbulent emotions, aiding me in understanding the depth of the trauma inflicted by my parents' neglect and rejection. It became evident that my mother's sudden reappearance had reopened old wounds I had thought were healed. With professional guidance, I began the process of true healing, learning to set boundaries and prioritize my well-being. Professional growth. At work, I channeled my energy into furthering my career. My diligence paid off as I was promoted to store manager. This role came with increased responsibilities and challenges, but it was also a testament to my resilience and dedication. My wife, now a successful cosmetologist with her own salon, and I found strength in our mutual growth and achievements. Reconnecting with extended family. Interestingly, my mother's attempt to tarnish my reputation had an unexpected positive outcome. Some distant relatives, who were initially concerned about the accusations, reached out to understand my side of the story. This led to heartfelt conversations and a reconnection with aunts, uncles, and cousins I had not seen in years. They provided a sense of familial support I had been missing, sharing stories and expressing regret over the estrangement caused by my parents. A glimpse into my parents' life. Occasionally, I heard snippets of my parents' lives through these extended family connections. After reconciling, they moved to a small town in the Midwest. My father continued his pediatric practice, and my mother began volunteering at a local community center. Their life seemed peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos they had left in my life. Though I had no desire to rekindle a relationship with them, knowing they were stable brought a strange sense of closure. Building our own family. My wife and I decided to start our own family. The process was both exciting and daunting, given my upbringing. I was determined to break the cycle, to provide the love and stability I had lacked. The birth of our first child was a transformative experience. Holding our baby, I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility and love, solidifying my resolve to be the best parent I could be. Community involvement. Community involvement. As our child grew, my wife and I became more involved in our community. We joined parent groups, volunteered at local events, and made lasting friendships. This network provided invaluable support and a sense of belonging. Our home was filled with laughter and warmth, a stark contrast to the cold, distant atmosphere of my childhood. Confronting the past. Despite the distance, my parents' shadows occasionally loomed over me. I continued therapy, delving deeper into my past and its impact on my present. My therapist suggested writing a letter to my parents, not necessarily to send, but as a means of expressing my feelings. The process was cathartic. I poured out years of hurt, anger, and sadness, but also moments of clarity and understanding. Forgiveness and moving forward. In time, I found a place of forgiveness, not for them, but for myself. I forgave myself for the guilt and shame I had carried, for the child who longed for parental love but never received it. This act of self-forgiveness was liberating, allowing me to fully embrace the life I had built and the future ahead. The road ahead. Today I am in a good place. My wife and I continue to thrive, raising our child with love and dedication. Our home is a sanctuary, filled with joy and security. I remain in touch with my extended family, cherishing the connections that have been rekindled. My journey has taught me resilience and the importance of self-worth. Though my parents are not part of my life, their absence has shaped me in ways that have ultimately made me stronger. I look to the future with hope and determination, grateful for the love and support that surround me. The past is a part of me, but it does not define me. I am defined by my actions, my choices, and the family I have chosen to create. The road has been long and arduous, but it has led me to a place of peace and fulfillment. Embracing parenthood. Parenthood proved to be a journey of self-discovery and immense joy. Every milestone, from our child's first steps to their first words, was a moment of wonder. My wife and I learned to navigate the challenges together, supporting each other through sleepless nights and toddler tantrums. Our child became the center of our world, bringing a sense of purpose and fulfillment I had never known. Creating new traditions. One of the most rewarding aspects of parenting was creating new traditions. We celebrated holidays with enthusiasm, inventing our own rituals and customs. Each Christmas, we decorated the tree as a family, telling stories about each ornament. On birthdays, we held special family outings, making sure our child felt cherished and loved. These traditions became the fabric of our family life, weaving memories that would last a lifetime. Strengthening our marriage. Amidst the joys of parenthood, my wife and I remained committed to nurturing our relationship. We scheduled regular date nights, even if it was just a quiet evening at home after our child was asleep. We communicated openly, discussing our dreams, fears, and aspirations. This ongoing dialogue strengthened our bond, ensuring that we grew together as partners and individuals. Professional milestones. In my career, I continued to thrive. As a store manager, I implemented new initiatives that improved efficiency and employee morale. I mentored younger colleagues, sharing the lessons I had learned along the way. This role not only provided financial stability but also a sense of achievement and pride. My wife's salon flourished as well, becoming a beloved fixture in our community. Her creativity and dedication earned her a loyal clientele, and she expanded her business, hiring additional stylists and offering new services.